Wars is part of the Rippin' Podcast Network. Join host Ben Ripping and Kevin Rips as they explore the extraordinary journey of Serena Williams on Cardboard Wars. Discover Serena's unparalleled career, marked by dominance, resilience, and cultural impact, as well as the surprising trajectory of her trading card market. This episode explores her legacy, the rise of women's sports, and the collector's treasure trove in her cards. So sit back and enjoy this episode of Cardboard Wars.
In the world of tennis, few names are as powerful as the human that we are going to talk about today, because this human has unmatched determination, incredible strength, and a relentless drive to win. And she transformed the sport of tennis and has inspired millions and millions around the world. From a young girl practicing on the public courts to becoming one of the greatest athletes in history, Serena Williams overcame obstacles, shattered records, and changed what people believed was possible. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Cardboard Wars. I'm joined today with Kevin, aka Kevin Rips, and me, aka Ben Rippin Online. We tell the story of the greatest athletes, the greatest teams, and the cards that represent and honor them here on Cardboard Wars. Today, we're telling the story of Serena, whose greatest victories came not only from winning matches, but from her courage, her resilience, and the lasting impact on the world.
How does the most dominant champion of the last 30 years, and really not just in tennis, Ben, but just, I'm going to leave it as the most dominant champion of the last 30 years, have a card market? You and I were talking about this before we started recording today, that swings from like a couple bucks to like $250,000. How does that even happen? And the answer to that question really comes in understanding both Serena, that's how we get the high end, and of course the card market, which you and I are going to dive into in a little bit, right? But most importantly, you and I love starting off. Let's talk about who Serena actually is. Let's talk about her career and her life, and then we'll get into the cards, because we know that collectors, they want to know about the cards too.
Absolutely. And the plan for Serena, it might have even been written before she was even born, because to understand Serena, you actually have to start with her father, Richard Williams. And this story is so audacious that if it were a movie script, you'd reject it as just not real, which is hilarious because they literally made the movie and Will Smith won the Oscar for it. Richard Williams is watching TV one day in the late 70s, and he sees a women's tennis player receive a check for winning a tournament. More money for 4 days of tennis than he made in an entire year. And this man who does not play tennis, who knows nothing about tennis, decides right then, I'm going to have 2 more kids, and they're going to be tennis champions. He writes a plan, reportedly 78 pages long, before Venus and Serena ever existed.
Think about that for a second. Every sports parent you've ever met, they think their kid's going to go pro, right? I'm glad Bob's not on this episode with us, because he'd be telling us how his kids are going pro, right? This is something everybody plans for their kids. But Richard planned it, and then he executed, right? Serena's born September 26, 1981. in Michigan. After that, the family moves out to Compton. And by the time she's 4 or 5 years old, she's already out there on the public courts with Richard and her mom, hitting hundreds of balls a day off of shopping carts that are just full of used tennis balls.
And the Compton part matters. This is Compton, Kevin, in the late 80s. We're talking about gang violence, gunfire near the courts, glass on the surface. Tennis in that era is traditionally country clubs, white skirts, and quiet please. And Richard is raising 2 black girls in Compton and telling anyone who'll listen that they're going to be the number 1 and number 2 players in the world. People laughed at him openly, but honestly, mistakenly, Kevin.
No doubt. And here's where Richard proves that he was playing chess, right? Everyone else is playing checkers. He was playing chess. Because when the girls start dominating the junior tennis circuit in Southern California, and I read Serena had gone something like 46-3 on the junior circuit, he pulls them out of junior tennis entirely. And everybody, again, told Richard he's crazy. Like they were saying that he's destroying their career, that this is going to hurt them. But his logic was he wanted to protect them from burnout. He also wanted to protect them from racism out on the junior circuit, which, at that time was probably a lot higher than it is in these days. And he also was protecting them from peaking too early. He actually got up and moved the family to Florida so they could train with the gentleman by the name of, I'm probably going to mispronounce it, Rick Mackey, and just develop these girls in private. Because while this episode is about Serena, we're going to talk a lot about her sister Venus as well.
Which is kind of the most bizarre development path in tennis history, but it worked. It's the sealed wax strategy, honestly. Everyone else is ripping packs in public, and Richard's like, nope, we're going to hold. We're going to let the asset mature. Patience over hype.
Yeah, leave it to you, Ben, to turn a Richard Williams story into a metaphor about investing in wax. But you're not wrong, dude.
I blame you for that analogy. Serena turns pro in 1995 at 14 years old. And for a few years, she's living in Venus's shadow. Venus is taller. Venus is truly a phenomenon. Venus gets the magazine covers. Serena is the little sister. But then something happened in 1999.
Yeah, the 1999 U.S. Open. At this point, Serena's 17 years old. She's seeded 7th, and she just goes on an absolute rampage through that draw. And in the finals that year, she faces Martina Hingis, the world number 1 player, the established darling. And by the way, the player who had been openly dismissive of both Williams sisters, the family. And Serena beats her in straight sets to win her first Grand Slam title.
Ladies and gentlemen, the 1999 U.S. Open Women's Singles Champion, Serena Williams.
And here's what everybody forgets, Kevin. Serena won a major before Venus did. The little sister actually got there first. She becomes the first African-American woman to win a Grand Slam singles title since Althea Gibson in 1958. 41 years. And that moment, that September in New York, is also precisely where her story of being on cards begins. Because just 2 months earlier, in July of 1999, her very first trading card had shown up in the most unlikely place imaginable. We'll put a pin in that. We're going to come back to that in a little bit in part 2.
Yeah, what a tease. Classic, Ben. Anyways, she wins the 99 Open, and things then start to get complicated for a few years, right? As with a lot of athletes, she's got injuries. She's got the dynamic of her older sister. And then an incident at the Indian Wells tournament 2001, which we have to talk about because it shapes a lot of what's to come for the years after that.
Indian Wells 2001. Venus withdraws from the semifinal against Serena minutes before the match, citing injury. The crowd is furious. Conspiracy theories fly about the matches being fixed by Richard. And when Serena walks out for the final 2 days later, this 19-year-old kid gets booed viciously for basically the entire match. Richard and Venus were reportedly subjected to all kinds of slurs from the rudes in the stands. And it's one of the ugliest crowd scenes in tennis history.
I would just like to point out, I like the term "the rudes" in the stands, Ben. That's a good one, buddy.
Trademark, Ben Rippin.
Despite the rudes, she won the tournament anyways, right? She's 19 years old at this point. She's getting booed by thousands of people. She wins the final anyways. What's crazy is she then refused to play that Indian Wells tournament for 14 years. 14 years. You know, some would say, Ben, that's not a grudge. Some would say that's a boundary. She did finally return, I think it's worth noting, in 2015. And she was greeted with a standing ovation. And this is something I thought was really cool and says a lot about who Serena is as a person. She said forgiveness was the reason. She just realized she had to forgive. And so she went back and she was greeted the way a champion should be greeted.
And what does she do with all that energy in the meantime? She turns it, Kevin, into the most dominant stretch women's tennis had seen in decades. Starting at the 2002 French Open, Serena wins 4 consecutive Grand Slams: the French, the Wimbledon, the US Open, and the 2003 Australian. All 4 in a row. And here's the wild part. She beats Venus in the final of all 4 of them.
That's it. That's insane. That's the Serena Slam, right? Holding all 4 major titles at the same time. And then can we just sit with the Venus part? Imagine the 2 best players on the planet are sisters. They're siblings. They shared a bedroom growing up. And now they have to play each other in 4 straight major finals with history on the line. There's never been anything like that in sports. I'd argue there probably won't ever be again.
Now, the mid-2000s, we get a little rocky. And this is the part of the story that matters for the card market as well, because this is when doubt creeps in. Injuries pile up in 2003. Her older sister, Yetunde Price, is murdered in Compton, a devastating, senseless loss that sent Serena into a genuine depression, as any of us can imagine and can relate. Her ranking slides. By 2006, she's outside of the top 100. And the Rudes, Kevin, are writing her off as washed, unmotivated, done. And she was only 25 years old.
Imagine saying that about a 25-year-old. But once again, it's now 2007. Australian Open rolls around. She comes in ranked 81st, unseeded. And the tennis media, or the Rudes, openly mocking her for her fitness or lack thereof. And she just demolishes the field, crushing the world number 1 player at the time, Maria Sharapova, in the final, 6-1 and 6-2. One of the most lopsided major finals ever played, by the way. It might be the single most disrespectful championship performance that anybody's ever seen on a tennis court. I mean, and I do mean that as disrespectful as the highest of compliments.
expression of omnipotence by Serena Williams. Convincingly, she is the 2007 Australian Open champion. Behind that fierce focus and fight that we've seen for a little over an hour on center court, Rod Laver Arena, there was a little girl that came out to celebrate her third Aussie Open championship.
And that's kind of a pattern with Serena. If you're a collector, kind of tattoo this on your brain. Every single time the world counted her out, she made them pay. Every time. And it happens again in 2010 and 2011 with the scariest chapter yet. She cuts her foot on broken glass at a restaurant right after winning the Wimbledon, has multiple surgeries, and then develops a pulmonary embolism, blood clots in her lungs. We heard about that earlier this year when we talked about Victor Wembanyama. Doctors say it was life-threatening. She's in a hospital bed wondering if she'll even walk again, let alone play.
Here's where it gets wild. She comes back from the literal near-death health crisis and launches the greatest sustained run of her entire career in her 30s. So from 2012 onward, talking about Wimbledon 2012, then you've got the Olympic. She wins the Olympic gold medal in singles and doubles that summer. The U.S. Open. Then under her new coach, Patrick, I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name, Ben. She had a new coach. You're just going to have to trust me with that. 2013, she wins the French Open. And by 2015, she's completed her second, quote unquote, Serena Slam, holding all four majors at once again, 13 years after the first time she did. Who does that, man? Like, how does anybody ever do that?
It's wild. In 2015, she comes within 2 matches of the calendar year Grand Slam, all 4 majors in a single season, something nobody had done since Steffi Graf in 1988. Before that, shocking semifinal loss to Roberta Vinci at the U.S. Open, which honestly might be the biggest upset in tennis history. We may talk about that at some other point. But the fact that a woman in her mid-30s was even in the position tells you the level of athlete that we're dealing with.
All right. January 2017, Australian Open. Tell me if you've heard this before. Serena beats Venus in the final. One more time. 2 sisters, all these years later. She wins her 23rd. Yeah, you heard me right. 23rd Grand Slam singles title. That breaks Steffi Graf's Open era record of 22. Incredible all on its own. And then a few months later, the world finds out the rest of this story.
See, she was pregnant, roughly 8 weeks pregnant when she won the Grand Slam. 7 matches against the best players alive without dropping a single set while pregnant with her daughter, Olympia. I need everyone listening just to kind of sit back and pause for a second and think about that feat. Is that the single greatest athletic accomplishment in the history of sports? I'm dead serious. She's a competitor. Kevin and I skip recording the podcast when one of us has a little sniffles. Serena crushes it.
Could you imagine how long of a hiatus we'd have if one of us got pregnant?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I look it.
All right. This is where the story gets a little more serious and honestly terrifying, because that birth, unfortunately, that nearly killed her too. After Olympia was born in September of 2017, Serena suffers another pulmonary embolism and just a cascade of complications that require multiple surgeries. She's spoken out about how she had to fight to get the medical staff to take her symptoms seriously. And she used that experience to shine a national spotlight on how dangerous childbirth can be. She turned her own trauma into advocacy, not just for her, but for other women. And that's the legacy beyond the baseline.
Yeah, she comes back. Of course she comes back. And reaches 4 more Grand Slam finals as a mother, chasing number 24. She doesn't get it. And you know what? I've come around to thinking that doesn't matter at all. 23, with the era that she conquered, the comebacks, the pregnancy title, the resume, it speaks for itself.
Yeah, it does. All right. So let's talk about kind of the farewell of her career and her numbers. August 2022, she writes the famous Vogue essay that I'm sure many of the listeners have heard before, where she says she's kind of evolving away from tennis. This is a competitor refusing to use the word retirement, which really is so perfectly Serena. You and I have done many episodes on the greatest of different sports, talking about Tom Brady, talking about Michael Jordan, and that retirement part was always really hard for them. So to hear that, see her not really use that word, not surprising at all. It's the mentality of that level of competitor. But that match, that 22 US Open, becomes kind of a 3-match farewell party, unlike anything the sport of tennis had ever staged. I mean, they packed the stadium. There was record TV audiences. It felt like the whole planet was watching a tennis match so they could say goodbye to her.
Final tally. Let's just read the ledger. 23 Grand Slam single titles, the most of any player, man or woman, in the Open era. 14 Grand Slam double titles with Venus. And they never lost a major double finals together. 14 for 14. 4 Olympic gold medals, 73 career single titles, 319 weeks at world number 1, and over $94 million in prize money. That's more than double any other woman in history at the time that she had stepped away.
This is also 0% surprising, but she doesn't slow down after tennis, right? She starts her own venture capital firm, Serena Ventures, investing in dozens of companies focused on founders that the traditional money tends to ignore. She gets married to Alexis Ohanian, the co-founder of Reddit. Remember that name. He's going to show up later when we start talking about cards. She has 2 daughters and really just leaves this massive cultural footprint that honestly dwarfs the sport of tennis itself.
So that's the athlete. Generational dominance, multiple resurrections, a cultural icon, the greatest of all time, conversation, locked and loaded. Now, the question the show exists to answer, what about her cards? What about her rookie cards? So here's your first Serena cardboard curveball, and it's a big one. Her first card doesn't come from Topps. It doesn't come from Upper Deck. It doesn't come from any traditional card company at all. Serena Williams' very first card appeared in July 1999 issue of Sports Illustrated for kids. A perforated sheet of 9 cards bound inside a children's magazine that some parent's kid had to physically tear apart along the dotted lines.
Oh, that detail, the perforation card. Ben, you and I have some of those from our childhood. I know that it gives me the shivers thinking about the entire economics of this card that somebody just tore out of a magazine, because those things were handled by kids. Again, it was in Sports Illustrated for kids, torn out by hand, shoved in desk drawers, and shoved in backpacks. Finding one in pristine condition is genuinely hard, if not impossible. So those rough perforated edges alone tank pretty much any copy at the grading table. So while the card itself isn't impossible to locate, a high-grade copy is legitimately scarce, and the market figured that out in dramatic fashion.
January 2022, a PSA 10 of that 1999 Sports Illustrated for Kids Serena sells for $117,000, which at the time set a record for the most expensive women's card ever sold. A kids magazine insert, $117,000. And just 2 months later, another copy from that same sheet goes for over $91,000 on eBay. not at some fancy auction house, just eBay.
Wild. For context on how seismic that was, Ben, the record for a women's card before Serena started stacking bodies was a Mia Hamm card, also Sports Illustrated for Kids card, at around $34,000. Like Serena didn't just like nudge past it. She more than tripled it. And she wasn't done. Before we get to the big one, we've got to talk about 2003 because that's where the official rookie card lives. The story kind of gets messy in the best way that card stories get messy.
Yeah, so quick hobby history lesson for us all. Tennis cards in America were basically dead throughout the 90s. No major licensed product for nearly a decade. Then in 2003, a company called NetPro launches a licensed tennis set. And because there's been nothing for so long, this one product becomes the de facto rookie card set for an absolute absurd list of players. Serena, Venus, Roger, Rafael, Andy Roddick, all in the same exact product.
Think about that. One checklist containing the first traditional pack issued cards of arguably the greatest men's player ever, two greatest men's player ever, Federer and Nadal, and the greatest women's player ever in Serena. Like, if that were basketball, we'd be talking about it the same way we talk about that 86 Fleer set, right? No, instead, most collectors had never heard of NetPro. In fact, I hear those words, I think of one of the early internet companies, but we're talking about a card company here. And I mean, that's the reason why we've talked about junk wax for so many times on this episode is there's more to this story.
Yeah, print runs. NetPro saw the opportunity and absolutely flooded the zone. The 2003 NetPro base set is widely considered one of the most overproduced products tennis has ever seen. There are sealed boxes of this stuff still floating around today, more than 23 years later. So Serena's base rookie, card number 1 in the set, gorgeous full bleed action shot, is relatively cheap. Even graded a PSA 10, have traded recently in the range of a nice dinner out. We're talking double digits only.
Which kind of creates the most schizophrenic market that you've ever seen when you think about it, because the same 2003 NetPro brand also produced some premium stuff, Ben. And the premium stuff is like a totally different universe, right? The International Series had our first certified autograph, numbered to 500, and get this, on card, like hand signed with her own hand on the card, in an era where everybody at the time was just like slapping sticker autos on everything. NetPro got Serena to sign the actual cards. Her first card, also numbered to 500, carries 2 swatches of match-worn gear. And then there's the Holy Grail, the autographed patch rookie, numbered to 100.
And in May 21st of 2022, Golden Auction puts up one of those 2003 NetPro signed RPAs, rookie patch autos, graded in a PSA 8 with a graded autograph that came in a 10. Match-worn material, final price, $266,000. More than doubled her own record of $117,000 from 4 months earlier, and set the all-time mark for a card featuring a female athlete.
And the auction drama around it was delicious, if you will. All that you'd expected card drama, because everybody's first guess for who the buyer was, everyone just assumed it was her husband, Alexis, because he's a legitimate, hardcore card hobbyist. So Twitter and the socials immediately assumed it was him. And he came out later, essentially said, wasn't me. But here's the part of Alexis' story that most people don't know, and it's my favorite subplot, if you will, in this entire market. This man has spent years quietly building the largest Serena Williams collection on earth. This guy loves his wife so much. I wonder if he's thinking like more as her husband or more as like the hardcore hobbyist? Like we're talking about over 4,500 of her cards submitted through PSA, right? They literally call it the Serena collection with a reported value of over $2.5 million. Who knows what it is today? Like that's a lot of cards.
And his reasoning is kind of pure hobby poetry. He looked at her card prices, said out loud, how is this market this inefficient? And started buying everything. The of 100 elite glossy rookies, the rare stuff, even stacks of the cheap base cards. His quote was basically, if I'm married to Picasso, I want to own every Picasso I can so my great grandkids never have to visit a museum to see her legacy. The single most informed insider on the planet regarding Serena Williams looked at the market and went all in. Do with that information what you will, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. So just check this progression with me here, if you will, because this is a market finding itself in real time. Her elite glossy rookie sells for about $44,000 in change at its record high, January of 2022. SI for kids goes for $117, a record that we talked about. March, another one goes for $91,000 on eBay. Patch Auto hits 66. That was a record at the time. Serena spent 21 and 22 breaking her own records over and over again. It's like she's playing the Australian Open against herself.
So where are we at right now in July of 2026? The post-record sale years followed by the same script as the rest of the hobby. The 2021 to 2022 froth cooled. The trophy cards went quiet and the base stuff settled back down to earth. But with two big currents are now running underneath this market, and both of them favor holding Serena cards long-term.
Current number one, the women's sports collecting boom is real. We've talked about that. I mean, you got to be honest about what it did to Serena's crown. Her 266,000 record for a women's card stood for about 3 years. And then Ben, your favorite, CC, Miss Caitlin Clark, completely obliterated it. Clark, one of one gold vinyl rookie sells for 366,000 in March of 2025, and really only go up from there, right? We could talk about the flawless logo woman, one of one. So Serena doesn't hold the record anymore, but here's why I think it's actually bullish for her. You cannot have a women's sports card market where the historical GOATs are just an afterthought. Every collecting category eventually rotates from the hot rookies back to legends. And when women's sports collecting matures, and it's maturing fast, Serena is a blue chip legend that the market is going to have to build its foundation on. I mean, she's the mantle of the universe, full stop, when it comes to female athletes.
It's been fun to watch the card sales of these phenomenal athletes in the WNBA and in tennis, and now cards in women's hockey, in UFC, fighting all around, and to see the prices that they're commanding. But it's even more fun, Kevin, to see, well, let's call her AKA Nicole Rips Tennis, opening boxes of tennis cards, and our other friends hoarding boxes and opening and seeing the hobby be opened up, and the great creators like Women on Tops and just these phenomenal people out there that are lifting the hobby to little girls and boys all around the world. I think that's what makes this episode special. We get to honor one of the greatest athletes of all time and show that women's cards command real prices and will in the future, like Paige Beckers and Olivia Miles and so many future stars, maybe Juju coming up in the next year or two, and the list goes on and on and on. That's what we do here at Cardboard Wars, is we honor people, the athletes, the cards, the producers, and we hope you enjoyed this episode. Give us a review, follow, share this with some friends, some tennis friends, and maybe go buy a box of tennis the next time you're at a card shop. And get some real bangers. Right, Kev?
Absolutely. That's what it's all about.
Thanks for listening to Cardboard Wars on the Rippin' Podcast Network. Don't forget to leave a rating and review and check out rippin.com to get connected to what we have coming up. Find us on Instagram and let us know what you would like to hear about on a future episode of Cardboard Wars. Until next time, keep rippin'.